Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of the live 49ers Mailbag Show, one of my favorites to do. This is where we bounce back and forth between previously submitted questions that came in either via 49ers mailbag at gmail.com or through Twitter, where I send out a tweet asking for your 49ers questions Tuesday mornings, and I get a wide variety of responses. I always love the interaction. So it goes back and forth between previously submitted questions, where it has a more thought out answer on my part, a bit more of the statistical analysis, and then the live questions that people ask in the chat as we're rolling. You get much more of an off the cuff answer. You get the straight dope in that one, right? I go with whatever rolls off the tongue there. But again, one of my favorite shows to do. Appreciate all of you that participate, whether it is through a previously submitted question or being here in the chat. Speaking of those that are here in the chat, I appreciate everybody that comes in and leaves those comments. Chris Royal, Sneakerhead, here on the channel saying, let's go. Rob, how was the trip, my man? Went out to Bend, saw my folks. It was fantastic. Absolutely great weather. It was warm out there, but not incredibly hot. A little bit drier in Bend than it is in Portland. So when it's in the 90s in Bend, it's still very breathable, very livable. In Portland, once you get up into the 90s, the heat, the sweltering heat and the humidity get to be a little too much for me. When you crank up into the hundreds in Portland, that is just unplayable in my book. Thankfully, we don't get many days like that during the summer. Dan Rostek coming in, Sneakerhead here on the channel. Well, we're stuck with Jimmy until at least mid-August. Yes, coming out moments ago was a report from Jeremy Fowler intimating that Jimmy Garoppolo will not be fully cleared until mid-August. And as we have been told, up until this point, nothing has changed with teams not wanting to get involved in a trade with Jimmy until he is fully cleared. So that seems to be a very clear indication that we should brace ourselves for Jimmy Garoppolo being with the San Francisco 49ers until mid-August. It becomes a completely different question as to whether he will be asked to report to camp. Certainly, I don't think the 49ers are forced into that situation, because if he's not fully cleared, they could make an exception and allow him to continue to work out with his trainers, I believe. I don't think there's anything that forces an injured player to be there if the team excuses the absence. Raphael 5629ers coming in to say, what's up, Rob, Sneakerheads, and everyone. E. Kim in the building. The notorious GAV saying Captain Rob or we riot. I can't tell whether he is now on the Captain Rob bandwagon, which clearly, if I could make Captain, I would love that. Or whether he's saying Captain Rob or we riot, because he may be talking about juice still. We're going to get to that juice. Here it is. Did I say Rob? I meant juice. Of course, juice. It's always juice. All right, we've got people in. Nice One is in the building. Charles Alt is in the building. Let's get into this thing. All right, if you've got a question for me, I want you to type in the @Rob or @RobShoe when you're in the chat, because that lets me know it's a question for me. So I'm going to give you an example here. The notorious GAV, Sneakerhead here on the channel, comes in. Rob Shoe. Mike McGlinchey has come out and said Juice should be a captain on the team. I watched that Mike McGlinchey interview on the SF Niners with Brad Graham. Phenomenal interview. Great takeaways for and from Mike McGlinchey. Looks like he's going to be healthy. Clearly, it's about, he's on a trajectory. He kept saying that over and over again, that things are trending in the right direction. Obviously, anything can change at any time, but that's the best you can hope for, is things trending in the right direction as you're going into training camp. All right, let me start with the previously submitted questions, as I always do. I will be back into your comments in just a moment. If you're here enjoying the video at this very moment, and you're a fan of the Mailbag Show, as I'm a fan of the Mailbag Show, do me a favor and hit that like button below. Help me amplify the message. Help me get it out to more and more Niner faithful. All right, this one comes in. It's not a question, it's a statement, but I got to give credit to E. Kim, because he's been predicting this one for a long time. And maybe I'm still right at some point. Maybe we still trade Jimmy. But E. Kim coming in with a comment, emailed it to me. It's approaching the start of training camp, and Jimmy is still on this roster. Yes, he is, and he will be into camp. It's just a question as to whether the 49ers will ask him to attend camp. Doubt he'll be making any throws until he's fully cleared, which we now have as mid-August. seems to be the date that we should have our eyes set on. Still look for Trey Lance to get all those first team reps. Still look for Trey Lance to be QB1 in 2022, but it does add a little intrigue to the situation. All right, this one is a question. Again, I shortened some of these, so I'm going to read out the entirety of this one coming in from Dan R., but I only had enough room to put the shorter version up here. So here was the question. He says, "Hi, Rob. How crazy is this hot take? Aaron Banks will be a Pro Bowler in 2022. Now, he goes on to make the case for it. He has 4 points here, and they're not up on the screen, but I think you're going to enjoy these 4 points. I certainly did. Number one, he'll be playing next to the GOAT, Trent Williams. In Laken Tomlinson's only Pro Bowl year, he played next to Williams. That's a solid point for point one. Number two, Shanny stated he was ready to move into the starting lineup near last year's midpoint, but the team started winning and chose to stick with what was working at the time. Great second point. So number one, he plays next to Trent Williams. When Laken played next to Williams, he made the Pro Bowl. Number two, he was looking ready last year. They just didn't put him in because they got into a groove. Number three, Lance's ability to move will help for a smooth transition to Banks and Brendel, which may result in fewer sacks. So his ability to escape sacks will help them. It also could hurt them, but I like your angle of it better. I like the optimism. I like the positivity. 4, per Jack Hammer, you know I trust Jack Hammer. Per Jack Hammer, he looks ready to step back in at his natural position at left guard. He transformed his body this offseason, keeping his weight the same, but converting mass to muscle. His strength and agility look good during OTA practices and minicamp. 4 solid points. I will say all of these reasons seem very well laid out here, Dan, and I support the idea that he is going to have a strong season, but I'm doubtful he'll get the recognition right away. Playing next to Trent will definitely make him better. I wonder if voters for the Pro Bowl will fail to give him credit because he's playing next to Trent Williams. I realize that didn't count against Laken Tomlinson, but Laken had been in the position, had been there performing at that level for a longer period of time. It was not his first year looking good. It took him a couple of years to get that recognition. And I will say that's the case throughout the league. It does seem to take a little while for the league to recognize significant change like that when a player turns around their career. Laken Tomlinson is a perfect example. He began to turn around his career when he arrived in San Francisco. It took until he played next to Trent Williams for him to get that recognition. I'm very optimistic for a good season. I don't see a Pro Bowl berth. The East Coast bias is very real here. All right, we've got a great question from Raphael, which is the title of the program, but we're coming back to your live questions. We will be back to the previously submitted questions in just a moment. All right, looking for the @Rob and @RobShoe statements so that I know you're talking to me. Here we go. Looking at Ekim. Rob, favorite barbecue style? Texas brisket, Kansas City, Memphis dry rub, or Carolina? Woo, that is tough. I will say that each has its own benefits. I will not disparage any type of barbecue. I tend to skew away from Carolina. Memphis dry rub, I'm not super experienced. So immediately my go-to would be leaning towards Texas brisket or KC barbecue. And just because I love brisket so much, in this instance, in this moment, I'm going Texas brisket. I like the question. Moses Martinez coming in, one of our DB experts at Rob Shoe. What's up? I'm ready to hear reports about the DB battles, especially for the nickel slot corner. My bet, Quentrez Knight. Book it. I like it. I mean, Moses was the first one to have any firm understanding of Darqueze Dennard adding anything to this team last year. People were, questioning that signing, and Moses was all over him having a significant amount of talent that he was bringing to the position. Obviously was only with the team for a short time last year. It'll be interesting to see if he's a part of that battle, but I will certainly be looking out for Knight here. Ellis 10 coming in to say, what's up, Rob? Appreciate it. Jamie Bryant doing the same. The notorious GAV at Rob Shoe. Jimmy needs to stay at home and not show up at training camp. No quarterback controversy, please. That's fair to ask. Would it be a quarterback controversy if Jimmy were merely present? If he's not practicing, if he's simply there, does that cause drama? And would that be enough for the San Francisco 49ers to say, hey, Jimmy, just stay at home. Just stay at home for now. Just stay at home. Kim Adams comes in to ask Rob, hey, Rob, do you do shows with Grant anymore? When I see this question, I'm hesitant to bring it up because I don't want to keep revisiting it. But I know that at times it's just a very genuine question of, do I still collaborate with Grant? And the answer is, at this point in time, I do not. That's not by my choice. That is Grant's choosing. He has every right to do so. I've not spoken to him. I've reached out. But not heard back. And like I said, that is totally within reason for Grant, I will say. And so, no, currently do not collaborate, but no hard feelings either. So I don't want anything out there rumor-wise as far as any hard feelings. Certainly not on my end. All right, next one up. BK from the Bay. Rob, is it true or rumor that Jimmy has been throwing for the last 2 weeks? It seems to be, the beat reporters that cover the team seriously, when Matt Barrows quotes that story and says, it does appear Jimmy has been throwing for a couple of weeks, I take that as gospel. However, I also believe this story that's coming out today, which is that he's not going to be fully cleared until mid-August. So that leads you to conclude that the amount of throwing he's doing, the velocity he's throwing at, like we're talking very light throwing, the initial stages of throwing the ball. I don't think he's whipping it out there, throwing it into tight windows just yet, practicing maximum velocity. I'm guessing that will come a little closer to mid-August. Leaving saying, Rob Shue, mid-August makes Jimmy untradeable. It's possible. Is there a team that's going to want to bring him in the middle of training camp? Does that take away from the advantage of bringing in a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo? Are you better off just rolling with the slightly less talented, in the case of the Cleveland Browns, Jacoby Brissett, who some may argue is equally as talented? I would argue is slightly less talented, but is the difference between a player that knows your system and has been in camp the entirety versus a player coming in attempting to learn, is that difference bigger than the difference in talent? And I can't answer that question. Ellis10, Rob, any word on Kinlaw? Only from the Mike McGlinchey interview that happened today. Mike talked specifically about the fact that he and Javon were in the building together, the two of them recovering this entire offseason, that it allowed for them to get very close. They were listening to the same tunes while working out. They were there consistently day in, day out. They're both going into, a final year of their contract with some uncertainty. So they share some experiences there. And the way in which Mike spoke about Javon, it was glowing praise. And again, it leads me to an optimistic outlook of, if Javon can stay healthy this season, he may finally be able to show why the 49ers drafted him where they did. I'm excited for it. Absolutely excited for it. Manly Shavers coming in. Rob, if Jimmy can't play until after the season starts, how can it be a quarterback competition against Trey and Jimmy? If it's mid-August, there could be a competition at the end there. I do not believe there is going to be a quarterback competition. I think this is Trey's job as QB1. If Jimmy remains, I see it as a very clear backup. I would want the team to put that messaging out there, making it very clear that he's a backup. And I certainly would not want to pay a backup $25 million. Mark Andre, Rob Shue, are you going to Chicago week 1? That is currently the plan, Mark. That is absolutely the plan. Gold-blooded coming in, better late than never. What's up, faithful Mr. Shue? Cheers. Hey, cheers. Better late than never. Always. Better late than never. Paul H. Rob Shue, would Jimmy losing a quarterback battle to Trey, if it happened, worsen the likeliness a team trades for him? I don't believe there will be a quarterback competition. But yeah, if he gets beat out by Trey, if it were clear that he were now the second best quarterback on the team, like legitimately gave the 49ers the second best odds to win games going forward, teams would then count on the fact that you're not going to pay a backup quarterback $25 million. You will need to eventually cut him. I think all of these factors play into leverage and supply and demand, and that's where we're at right now. The demand for quarterbacks has plummeted because the game of musical chairs is over, and the 49ers still retain the player that they are attempting to trade. So their leverage is weak at this point. Unless things change, I see other organizations being able to handle this how they see fit. I don't think the 49ers are in the driver's seat with regard to this trade. Jamie Bryant, Rob Shue, with the list of Niner games you will attend, which game excites you the most that I can't wait to watch? Chicago will be exciting, but the team that they're putting on the field isn't all that exciting. Going out to Mexico City, if I do make it out there, if I get the passport renewed in time, I'm always a fan of watching us beat up on a division rival. Being in another country would be a glorious experience, and I anticipate that being a very ruckus crowd there in Mexico City. So I think that would be most exciting. I'm also very excited about Denver. Beating Russell Wilson is always top of my list. I don't care what uniform he's wearing. It's a little bit sweeter when we beat him on the Seahawks. That didn't happen all that often. So let's start it here in Denver. I think, and Vegas on New Year's. That's going to be fun. Man, there's a couple. Those are the top three for sure. Vegas, Denver, and Mexico City. Yeah. If the Raiders are still in it, I'm taking that one. I'm taking Vegas for New Year's. Come on. That's going to be elite. All right, 916-49 and Rob Shue, did you happen to catch any of that interview with number 8, Steve Young? I have not heard that yet. Did hear the Mike McGlinchey news. Did see the Jeremy Fowler report. Have not heard the Steve Young interview, but will be listening for that. I heard him when he was on with Matt Mayoko more recently, but not the one that people are talking about today. Quesadilla, Thrilla, Sneakerhead here on the channel. At Rob, the Niners seem to have depth at every position except O-line. If there are injuries, are we in trouble? Thank you. I actually see it somewhat differently along the O-line. I see it questionable as to who the 5 starters are, but I really like our depth. The idea that there's a competition going on between Jalen Moore and Aaron Banks potentially at right guard. You have 3 or so backups that you would think the 49ers are excited about sneaking onto the roster. I mean, McKivitz came in and played serviceably at the end of last year. You might even say better than that. Certainly Jalen Moore in there is someone to be excited about. And then you have the new additions, right? Donovan West. You have the young gentleman that we drafted earlier than that is escaping me at the moment, but the guard, I mean, there are several guys that the Niners will try to sneak on. My question is, do they find the starting 5 quickly and give them enough time to gel as the starting unit? I actually like the depth there. I'm just not sure about the starting unit. All right, E. Kim. Rob, you see Bosa and Debo getting extension before training camp starts. I see Debo getting it. We heard his trainers say Debo's about to get paid. That could be a precursor. I mean, Debo did come back to San Francisco a little bit earlier than he needed to start training before training camp. I see that as a sign. I do think that we get his deal done. I don't think Bosa's deal is going to get done this offseason. Initially, I did. I have to admit, it seems as if Jack Hammer was correct about that one. All right, I will be back to the questions that are happening in the chat. I'm going to hit a couple of previously submitted ones right now. This one coming in from Raphael A. Raphael asked this one that earned the title of the show, saying linebacker, cornerback, and safety groups. Out of the 3 positions, which one will have more interceptions this upcoming season? If I were just picking the best group out of that, I'd have to go with linebacker. I mean, if it was a purely skill-based assessment of like, this is the most skilled group in the linebacker group, and therefore the most skilled group is going to have the most interceptions, I would say the linebacking core is the one that gets it. But that's oftentimes not the case, right? It doesn't matter that these may be the most talented group. This may be the most talented group of the entire defense, if we're looking at it that way. But it's about chances as well. And typically you get more chances at interceptions on the outside. So I went back to look at the historical data, and it does point to a trend of cornerbacks leading the way. 2021, no one had more than 2 interceptions last year. Jimmy Ward had 2. Everybody else had 1. The linebacker group had 2 total. Cornerback group, 3 total. Safety group, 2 total. Just Jimmy's 2. This is regular season. 2020, you had Jason Verrett and Fred Warner, each having 2. That totaling out as 3 for the linebacker group, 3 for the cornerback group, 1 for the safety, 1 for the defensive line. Javon Kinlaw sneaking in there. And then you had 2019, the best statistical season when it comes to takeaways, specifically interceptions over the past 3 years. And you had Sherman and K'Wan both coming in with multiple interceptions. Richard Sherman had 3 on the season, K'Wan Williams with 2. The linebacker core had 4 interceptions on the season in 2019. Cornerbacks walked away with 7, safety 0. And defensive line 1 with Nick Bosa grabbing that 1 pick. So it seems that you've got to go with cornerbacks based on pure numbers, historical trends, and the talent that was added on that side of the ball. Now, this feels like a perfect follow-up to that, but it was Rohan that comes in with this one. So a different person asking the question, but it tees up to the other one so nicely that I just had to put them next to each other. So who's going to lead the 49ers in interceptions in 2022? This one's going to be a big, bold prediction for me. And I realize that there's every chance it doesn't come to fruition. I'm picking Jason frickin' Verrett. I realize that he may not be healthy. There's a chance he doesn't even make the 53-man roster, and I'm acknowledging that. I know that even if he is healthy, there's a chance that he may not start. But I will say this, he is the best ball hawk out of the group, and natural talent often shines through, and that's where I have faith. Plus, you know me, I've got Jason Verrett sneakers here, and I want these bad boys to get signed, and that means I need Jason Verrett to make the team. I need him to have a great season, and then Jason Verrett, I'd love you to come on the program and speak to me about that wonderful season, because I knew it was going to happen. I foresaw this 6 interception season that you're about to have. It's going to be phenomenal. I, again, think that natural talent's going to come through. Here are the historic numbers for Jason Verrett. 7 career interceptions in 36 starts. Small sample size, the 36 starts, small sample size. But that is 0.19 interceptions per game. Let's look at Jimmy Ward, who has 4 picks in 74 starts. That's 0.05 picks per game. The new addition, Charvarius Ward, 4 picks in 43 starts. That's 0.09. The model, Richard Sherman, 37 picks in 136 games, 0.27 picks per game. That's almost a quarter of an interception per game. 1 interception every 4 games. That's pretty freaking phenomenal. So 1 every 4 for Richard Sherman. Hey, it's 1 every 5 for Jason Verrett. So he's not trailing by a whole hell of a lot, and he's twice as good at picking it off as Charvarius Ward. Again, small sample sizes here, so I'm not playing that up too much. But big-time bold prediction for me, Jason Verrett does make the 53 and does lead the team in interceptions. All right, we got the follow-up coming in from Rohan here. Where will the 49ers rank amongst the league in turnovers? So I look back last year, 49ers, bottom half of the league last year, 20 takeaways. They were bottom third of the league in interceptions, and that's the area that I'd expect the most improvement. I think a more ferocious pass rush should force the ball out quicker. I would guess more errant throws as a result of the ball being forced out quicker. That combined with more talent in the back end, in the secondary, should produce an uptick in interceptions. But I'm not going crazy here. I don't think it's going to be some wild swing. I'm going in the 12 to 15 range for San Francisco in total turnovers. I'm predicting 24 takeaways for the San Francisco 49ers next season. All right, let me get back into your live comments. Those of you here in the chat, you know that I appreciate all of you being here. All right, great one, 765 at Rob Shoe. Again, if you're asking a question in the chat, I do ask that you put in the at Rob Shoe, so I know you're talking to me. Do you think Niners can do a 1-for-1 trade with the Browns, Jimmy for Jacoby Brissett? I think it's possible that Jacoby Brissett could be involved in a trade with San Francisco. Again, it matters as to the difference between Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo. How does Cleveland view that difference to be? Do they think that it's a marked improvement to step over to Garoppolo, in which case they'd be willing to trade away Jacoby Brissett, they would throw in a draft pick, and they would take on that salary? If they're asking the 49ers to eat a portion of that salary and give up Jimmy and just get back Jacoby Brissett without any draft pick as compensation, that would feel like a scenario where the 49ers might be graded as losing that transaction, losing that trade. And it seems John Lynch is very set on this idea of getting appropriate value for Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think they hold out. As foolish as that seems, they may hold out for that fair compensation as they view it. Leaving Rob Shu, Jimmy restructure $8 to $10 million, misses all of training camp, and with all the drama of him being on the regular season roster versus Sudfeld as clear backup. Let me try and get that one more time because I'm not getting the question there, Leaving, but I'm going to see if I can't suss it out. Jimmy restructure $8 to $10 million, misses all of training camp, and with all the drama of him being on the regular season roster versus Sudfeld as a clear backup. So if he restructures to $8 to $10 million, would we want to keep him around? I mean, at $8 to $10 million for a backup, I listened to Matt Mayoko's podcast the other day, and he made a very fair case around the idea that the 49ers view themselves as a Super Bowl roster. However, if Nate Sudfeld is your backup and something happens to Trey Lance, you cannot legitimately consider yourself a Super Bowl roster. If you have switched out Nate Sudfeld for Jimmy Garoppolo, no matter what you're paying him, even if you're paying him the $24 million, with this current roster as constructed, it's fair to consider yourself still a Super Bowl contender. The 49ers were within throwing distance of a Super Bowl last year with Jimmy as a starter. So there is some logic to that. For me, it is about that $8 to $10 million figure. If you can get him down to that number, it seems very reasonable. Dan coming in, doing the good deed. These are the names I was attempting to come up with later. Burford and Zakel. Those are, in fact. Kim Adams coming in. Rob, did you get the pick of my 67 GOAT? Yes, I did. Kim, I love 67 GTOs. This is back to the muscle car topic that we came up with earlier. The picture itself was a little bit low resolution, so I didn't think it would translate to showing it on here, but I absolutely love seeing it. 69 GTO is a fantastic year. Of the square body GTOs, 67 is by far my favorite. Are you rolling with a 400? In there, 396. What's rocking in the 67 GOAT right now? The notorious GAV. Rob Shu, what handicap do you think Robbie Gold plays off? No idea. My folks are into golf. I am not so much, but he seems to be quite good. Tom Jensen, sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. Rob, when the team leader in picks has 3, that's the stat that matters. They ignored the need for a ball hawk. Again, St. Louis Ribs. St. Louis Ribs, you cannot go wrong with St. Louis Ribs. And I agree. You and I were talking about this, Tom. Wanted to get a ball hawk on this roster. I would have loved for Jalen Petrie to have been one of the picks in this year's draft. Doesn't seem that way. Nice one coming in, Rob. Could this year be one of the most anticipated starts to the season? Although I have said this in the past often. With Trey Lance coming out, I think that it is. Once we get confirmation that it's Trey Lance from the get-go, which it obviously is, yes, I think this will be the most anticipated start to the season. Very anticipated. Leaving, coming in. Nice work. Clunky question. I appreciate you coming back in to say that. Absolutely. Chris Royal coming in with the super chat here. Unfortunately, with the report that Jimmy won't be fully healthy till mid-August, I think it's likely that he will be released instead of traded. That's a fair assessment. I mean, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, who seem like the most likely team to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, the advantage of getting Jimmy in at the beginning of camp is very real. If I'm looking at the difference between Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, I see a definite difference, but it's not a huge difference. And if Jacoby is here in camp, knows the system, can step onto the field from day one, you just have to ask yourself, what is the value for Jimmy Garoppolo at that point? I think it's entirely possible that Jimmy does have to be released at some point, and that's unfortunate. Kim Adams, it's the 400, and it's built up quite a bit. I would like to hear that bad boy. Nothing quite like hearing an old school. The 400, I guess technically may not be a big block. Don't quote me on that. I can't recall whether the 400 in the Pontiac is technically a big block or not. Anyways, it's freaking huge, and you hear that rumble, it lets you know you're alive. Yes, it does. Manly Shavers, Rob, do you really believe on how low they put Debo on Madden with the year he had last year? No, I don't. It was disrespect. And we're going to get to Madden disrespect in a little bit because we're going to be talking about Elijah Mitchell. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm anticipating a little bit of disrespect there as well. All right, this one's fun. Notorious GAV, always talking about Kyle Youscheck, and he comes in here hot. Notorious GAV says, I want 3 legitimate reasons why Kyle Youscheck is not a captain on the 49ers, and you can't use he's a fullback because that's a gimme, he says. All right, you want 3. You want 3, Gav. Here it is. Clearly, not enough vowels in his name. I mean, Juszczyk? How do you even expect his teammates to write his name on the ballot? I know how it's spelled, and I can't type that thing out. 1 vowel? Are you kidding me, Juice? Unbelievable. They might elect Juice, but certainly not Youscheck. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It needs to be altered. Number 2, Gav. He's from Harvard. He's from Harvard. I mean, seriously, can anyone vote for a guy coming out of Harvard? No, you packed a car in Harvard Yard. You know he's constantly reminding dudes how much smarter he is than them. And that's totally annoying. You can't vote for that. Can't vote for that. Lastly, Gav, because he's a freaking fullback. I'm just kidding. Obviously, I, believe that Juice should be a captain. The being a fullback thing shouldn't be a mark against him. Certainly not in a team that values the run game as much as the 49ers. The truth is, Gav, there is no third reason. The man deserves to be a captain, and this is the year. Mike McGlinchey has vouched for him on an interview. Other players are going to catch wind of that. This is it. You have started the frickin' movement, Gav, and it's happening. All right, next previously submitted question. Who will start at strong safety opposite Jimmy Ward? Will Hufanga win the starting job over Moore and Odom? Coming in from Uncle Salty. Simple answer here for me on this one, Uncle Salty. Yes, Hufanga appears to be the favorite here. Coming in, and until I see something from one of the other two, I just view this as Huff's job to lose at this point. This is one where the expected camp competition that we sort of hyped up won't be as much of a competition because I don't think the Niners really invested much at the position. I see George Odom as a special teams addition with great backup upside, but I'm not looking at him as a significant challenge to Hufanga in taking the starting role. And for a guy whose main attribute is athleticism, into various more, coming off of the Achilles injury is really going to hurt him in making that comeback. So I do see this as, again, Huff's job to lose there. All right, coming back into the current questions getting thrown in there, and I love the enthusiasm that is occurring in the chat. Dan coming in. Rob, if Jimmy's the backup, wouldn't there be more pressure on Shanny to bench Trey if he struggles? This scenario is fraught with disaster. It absolutely is. It's completely fraught with peril. As soon as Trey Lance struggled, which let us be clear about the idea that he is likely to struggle at points this year. It happens to the best quarterbacks. And it certainly happens to the best young quarterbacks who are having their first full season of starting. Go back and look at Peyton Manning's first year. I mean, it doesn't often start pretty, even for those that end up being elite in this league. So you assume that there is going to be a struggle. If it's Nate Sudfeld behind him, I don't even think, fans who wallow in their own ignorance are going to be calling for Nate Sudfeld over Trey Lance. But if it's Jimmy Garoppolo behind Trey Lance, there will be a loud contingent of fans calling for Jimmy Garoppolo to come in if Trey Lance were to struggle. There would be a loud voice from the national media coming in if Trey Lance were to struggle. So it is absolutely fraught with peril. And part of the reason why, if you can get some asset for Jimmy, I think it's worth moving on. My fear is if there's no asset in return and it comes down to just a cut, John Lynch did say as much. The Niners value him more than just the $25 million in salary. That could be a mistake, but it seems to be where the Niners are at. Jaguayo 56, sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. Rob, I hope you had a great time with family. I just believe Bosa and Debo extensions were already budgeted. What do you think? I do think they were budgeted, and the Niners could afford both of them this offseason. It just doesn't seem they're prioritizing Bosa's extension this year. No urgency. No mention of it getting done. And perhaps that's because Bosa's camp has very little motivation to try and get a deal done right now. They may want those salaries to continue going up. He's already north of $30 million on average per year. If a few more top-end contracts get done before his deal does, man, he could be sitting at $35 million average per year. And, he's not hurting for the money right now. His brother's got a ton of money. He just bought himself a boat. So he can wait. He can wait and get that bigger contract. Bryant Culp, Rob, Subway, LOL. We will know soon. Bryant, we need to update what the wager is here. I'll have to go back and watch it. But yes, there is a wager on the line regarding Subway, and I gather multiple wagers on the line for Bryant. Just one with me, I believe. We'll get that. We'll get that. Get that hammered out as to what that wager is, and I could be losing it. Notorious GAV, Rob Shue, Josh Hokett came out on CG Ruthless's show and said Juice should be a captain too. Man, we got the backup fullback saying it. We've got Mike McGlinchey saying it. It's happening. It is happening. Chris Royal saying, Rob, reason number 3, unfortunately, fullback isn't an impactful position. It is not, but for a team captain, he gets the respect. And I think he could earn the team captain spot. It's just about his buddies, his teammates voting him in. Starco Fan 212, sneakerhead here on the channel. Rob Shue, maybe Kyle will have his son solve 2-digit multiplication problems without a calculator. That would be fascinating as well. I would love to see Kyle's son doing multiplication problems. That would be delightful. Terry Wright, Rob, what do you think about the Rap Sheets report that Jimmy G will be on the roster to at least mid-August? It seems valid. If he's not fully cleared, the Niners are not going to release him because they're not just going to eat that $7.5 million injury guarantee. There's no reason to. Just let him sit on the roster for a few more weeks. Even if you're going to cut him, wait until he's cleared and then release him. So regardless, I think it proves to us Jimmy's going to be on this roster till mid-August because he's not going anywhere until he's cleared, regardless of whether it's a release or a trade. 91649 saying, Rob Shue, the Sudfeld slander is just not cool. Hey, let me clarify that too. This is a man who's getting paid $2 million guaranteed to hold a clipboard as a backup quarterback. This man is doing well in life. This man is one of, if you take starters and backups, that's only 64 people for the entire NFL. If you are first or second string quarterback, you are one of the 64 best quarterbacks in the frickin' world at your position. So even me trashing him a little bit, just a little bit, hopefully in lightheartedness, is still acknowledging that he's an elite athlete, is capable of coming in and winning some games. I would feel better if we lost someone for a couple of games if we were going to a Jimmy Garoppolo instead of a Nate Sudfeld. No offense intended, Nate. Just in case that's Nate's burner, 91649er. I don't know. Hi there, comes in Rob. I was wondering, since it's the Major League Baseball All-Star game right now, do you have a baseball team? I have been to a World Series game in watching and rooting for the San Francisco Giants. I will say I'm not huge into baseball, so it's weird for me to say the Giants are my team, but if I had to pick favorites, it would definitely be the Giants, and I would throw in the Boston Red Sox there as well. I grew up born outside of Boston, Massachusetts, lived there for the first 8 years. The Red Sox and the Celtics were a team that I took fond memories with me. Patriots I let go of. I just let go of them. It could have been the shellacking they took in 1985 that played into that. Starco Fan 212, Rob Shue, trade Jimmy to replace that Jared guy as the face of Subway. They definitely need to replace that guy. I mean, that is problematic, highly problematic. All right, let's get back into the previously submitted questions before I come back into the chat to answer your questions live. All right, this one comes in from John B. John B comes in to ask that question that's relevant every offseason, and I had to shorten this one up a little bit. John B came into Portland, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. He says, who do you think will be this year's camp star that everyone gushes over but hardly sees the field in the regular season? Goes on to say, also, your Portland recommendations were solid. I have one for you, the pork belly mac and cheese at Grassa, on Washington Street. Grassa is phenomenal. I have not had their pork belly mac and cheese. I'm a big fan of their pastas, though. And the next time I order it, I will absolutely be trying the pork belly mac and cheese. Thank you, John, for the recommendation on my own home turf. I love it. As far as the player who's going to be the camp star, I'm going running back here. One that could possibly work their way onto the 53-man roster, but who might still struggle to unseat the top 3 running backs and thus may not get many snaps. I'm taking Jackhammer's eyes on this one, and I'm saying Jordan Mason, the running back out of Georgia Tech. Think Corey Sheets, all those years where we would see Corey Sheets go off in preseason and then just wonder where he went. Now, he didn't actually make the 53-man roster. The question here of Jordan making the 53-man roster becomes, can he unseat Jeff Wilson Jr.? Can he outperform Jeff Wilson Jr., or do the 49ers see enough upside that they simply just can't risk trying to get him onto the practice squad? So that's who I have my eye on in the preseason. Next previously submitted question coming in from Red and Gold. Do you expect Kyle to implement more 4 wide receiver sets now that Jennings emerged last year, that they drafted Gray, and with them acquiring Ray in free agency? Yes, emphatically, yes. I believe we should see more 4 wide receiver sets. The top 3 are absolutely solid this year. You're bringing back Debo after his epic season in 2021. Brandon Ayuk appears to be BFFs with Trey Lance. So that's a freaking positive. What a great way to increase your targets than to make yourself best friends with the guy throwing the ball. Then you have Jawan Jennings getting glowing words of praise from coaches and teammates coming on late in the season last year. Would expect him to continue that progress going into 2022. Then you've got 2 incredibly exciting players to compete for that 4th spot. Each seems likely to contribute in different ways. Danny Gray with the wheels as the speedster, deep shots, take advantage of Trey Lance's cannon arm, getting outside the pocket, a broken play, Danny Gray streaking down the field. That seems like it's going to bear fruit. And then you have Ray McCloud with his extreme elusiveness. Maybe not the straight line speed that Danny Gray has, but able to maintain high velocity through cuts, get back to top speeds very quickly. I say between those 2, I'm very excited about our receiving core beyond the top 3 this season. All right, another previously submitted question. This one coming in from D. Case. D. Case coming in to say, we have position battles to the max this year. Who's your favorite Niner that will likely miss the 53-man roster? So in that previous one, I saw it as a chance for Jordan to actually make the 53-man roster. Jordan Mason, I see that as a chance that he makes that 53-man roster. Who am I a fan of that's not going to make the 53-man roster? This may not go over well in the chat because he is popular, and I'm a fan of Ross Dwelly. But I feel like the enthusiasm 49er Twitter and some other gathering spots for Niner faithful have generated for Ross. I love that enthusiasm. I love the sort of rooting for the underdog that happens here. We consistently see him make highlight catches each offseason, and each year I have believed that he's primed for a breakout, not a breakup. This may be the breakup this year, but the breakout. This is the year that I'm getting off the Dwelly bandwagon. This is it. I'm saying that not only does Ross not regain the tight end 2 spot that he appeared to lose to Charlie Warner at the end of last season, I'm going to go even further and say that he doesn't make the 53-man roster. I made an earlier prediction this offseason that I'm going to stick with. That is Tanner Hudson makes the 53-man roster instead in that tight end group. I know That is sacrilegious, and I must apologize to Ross Dwelly. I hope I'm wrong about it. I hope that he proves me wrong. Tommy Hugsley is back in the building. Here we go. Tommy Hugsley coming in at Rob Shoe. Debo will not get top 3 wide receiver money. W Niners. L Debo. Win for the Niners, loss for Debo. I hope he learned to be more mature. So, Tommy, if I'm interpreting your statement correctly here, not only do you believe that Debo won't get top 3 wide receiver money, and depending on how you grade the contracts, I think you're probably correct about that. Whether you're looking at average annual value, total guaranteed money, largest contract overall, I think it is fair to say in several of those categories, at least, Debo will not be top 3. But you're also indicating that might be as a direct result from the way in which he acted on social media, clearing that out and creating tension with the team. I'm not sure that I buy into that. I do believe that Debo will struggle to get top 3 wide receiver money. If you look at strictly guaranteed money, he might get close to that. And I believe that's what Debo's camp will be most. That's what, if I were Debo, I would be most obsessed with, given where he is in his career, some of the injury history. I'd be looking at guaranteed money if I were him, especially the way in which he's used within this offense. And so I don't necessarily believe that he hurt himself with the way in which he chose to negotiate. I will say I would not have chose to negotiate that way. I think you pay your agents an exorbitant amount of money for what they do so that they can handle negotiations for you, such that you don't need to get emotionally invested in the process. Yes, it is potentially tens of millions of dollars, and it's easy to get emotionally invested over tens of millions of dollars. Well, I don't know. I've never had the opportunity for tens of millions of dollars, but if I did, I would get emotionally invested over it. But I do agree. The more mature you come across in those negotiations, the better it is for both parties, for everyone involved. All right, Dan coming in with this one. Rob, any chance they carry 6 running backs to keep Mason? If so, what position gets shorted one spot? With needing to keep offensive linemen and defensive linemen, particularly defensive linemen at this point, I don't think that you can sneak an extra running back on there. You've just got to count on the fact that the 49ers are good enough at picking up guys off the street and getting them ready to play. You know, I hate to say it, but if you see enough upside from Jordan Mason, I believe we have seen what Jeff Wilson Jr. is, and he is a phenomenal 4th running back to have on the team. And if you end up with Jeff Wilson Jr. as your 4th running back, then you have a stacked running back roster. But if you have a young guy who may be flashing something, may have a higher ceiling, I just wonder if you don't want to go the higher ceiling route just for that simple fact that, you know, we've seen what you can get out of Jeff Wilson Jr., which is great. And I think he does bring something to the room. But if I see that upside in Jordan Mason, I'm taking it. I am taking it. All right, going back to the previously submitted questions, we just got 2 more to close out on here. Dan coming in with this one. What are your thoughts on a Jimmy trade to the New York Giants? He goes on to say, I don't see it because they're not in win now mode, and they need to see if Jones shows improvement, talking about Daniel Jones. If he flops, it seems they've already committed to Taylor as their bridge quarterback, and it would make more sense to draft another QB. I see this as having a hard time. I have a hard time seeing this, a team that isn't in win now mode, investing $24 million plus unless they're somewhat desperate. You did mention that yourself. The Giants don't seem to be desperate. They don't seem to be in a win now mode. Giants fall into the category of those 5 to 7 teams that I absolutely believe would be lining up to entertain bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo if he was cut by the 49ers. If he's cut and you get to renegotiate a contract with him and you don't have to compensate with draft picks, there will be a laundry list of teams that are exploring Jimmy Garoppolo, several of them as their backup quarterback. But I think Colin Cowherd is onto something here. I don't think that Jimmy's the most underrated player in the NFL, as he tried to make the case for. That's madness. But there will be teams looking to upgrade the quarterback position where if Jimmy is free to negotiate with them, then they will negotiate. They will kick the tires. They will see if he would be a fit. I think the Giants fit into that category. This one coming in from Raphael asking, Madden ratings for running back are out tomorrow. Where do you see Elijah Mitchell's rating? I'm guessing he's going to be an 83 overall. 83 wouldn't be bad. 83 would not be bad. I think you got to ask yourself, if they disrespected Deebo Samuel, would they disrespect Elijah Mitchell? And the answer there is abso-freaking-lutely. If you're going to disrespect Deebo after that season that he had last year with his rating, I think they absolutely disrespect Elijah. I may be going too high on this one. It will be the logic, their logic, if you ask me, why they'll underrate him. I think they'll say to themselves, well, anybody can be successful in Shanahan's offense. Hell, they took this guy with a 6th-round pick. They've had different leading backs every year. He doesn't have elite traits. He doesn't have elite speed. He doesn't have elite strength, elite elusiveness. So I see this as looking at that complete picture, them saying to themselves, anybody can have success in Shanahan's offense. And Elijah Mitchell doesn't jump off the page in any one specific category. He's just good within this system and good across the board. My guess is a 79 overall, and I might be being generous there. It could be even lower than that, but 79 feels right. All right, I'm closing out in the comments with your questions now. If you have a final comment, final question, now is the time to get it in there. If you haven't hit the like button on the video, now is the time to hit that like button. Here we go. Starco Fan 212. If the worst comes and Trey doesn't work out, do you think the Niners should draft a quarterback next season? A case could be made for teams drafting quarterbacks significantly more frequently than they do, particularly taking late-round flyers on quarterbacks. I would argue that the Niners might be in a position to draft a quarterback next year, irrespective of what happens with Trey Lance. It would depend on just how bad the season went, whether I think they should do it in preparation for moving on from Trey Lance. I believe you should draft a quarterback because, much like New England, you can keep them coming in, prepare them, and then trade them away for assets. There's value to doing that, to having a quarterback factory, if you will. I don't know that the 49ers have that reputation, but they could generate it if they continue to draft and develop quarterbacks. I'm not willing to give up on Trey Lance if he struggles for one season. That would feel way too early. I think you have to be prepared to be patient with the young gentleman. He has the skill set necessary to overcome early struggles, in my humble opinion. So I would not draft a quarterback trying to replace Trey Lance, if that's the question. Leaving. Rob Shue, Jimmy needs a stacked roster, and even that has not been enough. No, but we do currently have a stacked roster. And so if you're talking about a situation where Trey Lance is the unquestioned starter with a stacked roster, and your backup is Nate Sudfeld, you lose Trey Lance, even though you have a stacked roster, you may not be able to go into the playoffs and make any noise. You keep Jimmy Garoppolo as your backup, now you have a chance. It just becomes a question of, is it worth the salary that you have to eat up to do so? At his full salary, I say no. I do not think a backup is worth $25 million. The chances of it coming into play and saving your season seem suspect, not worth $25 million. In the $10 million range, now you're singing a different tune for me. Now I could absolutely get behind that. Chris Royal agreeing with me, but saying that 79 overall for Elijah Mitchell as my prediction for his Madden score is a maximum. That is the ceiling. Oh no. And Raphael 5629ers pointing out the disrespect that Jawan Jennings is getting with a 70 overall. This is what I'm talking about. We may even see, if Jawan Jennings is sitting at a 70, we may see like a 72 for Mitchell. My 79 could be real generous. The Ramelia Sports Report. I like the fact that you're in here asking questions. I'm here for it. Are the Niners in win now mode with an inexperienced quarterback? maybe win some now, and hopefully in 2 years, he'll be ready to take that next step mode. I don't think that's how the Niners view this. If you watch the type of quarterback play from Jimmy Garoppolo that propelled them to the NFC Championship game, you could say to yourself, it's not out of the realm of possibilities for Trey Lance to have a similar statistical season wherein through a combination of his arm and legs, he's able to produce at the level of Jimmy Garoppolo last year. And that was sufficient to get us into the NFC Championship game, which I'm sure you remember. We played someone, I can't quite recall who that was we played in the NFC Championship game. It's escaping my memory at the moment. Starco Fan 212, Rob Shue, I will not be surprised if they disrespect Elijah or Debo, considering how bad the Madden ratings have been. That is fair. That is fair. We have got a super chat, got to bring it in here. Raphael 562 Niners, great show, Rob. Hit that like button, faithful. Cheers. Cheers to you, Raphael. I appreciate that. Appreciate you always being someone who is reminding the faithful to have faith. Hit that like button, subscribe. I mean, Raphael, I appreciate it. I really, really do. All right, looking for a couple more of these at Rob Shoes. I saw him, Jaguayo56, sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. Rob, great show. Stay blessed. Go Niners. You stay blessed as well, Jaguayo56, and thank you so much for coming in. Always appreciate the contributions. Great 1765. Rob Shue. Tavarius Moore will be the breakout player for us and the ball hawk we always needed. Mark my words. Cheers to that. I love the prediction. I hope Tavarius Moore is the ball hawk that we need. I'm assuming if he's going to lead in interceptions or be the breakout player, he'll have to claim that strong safety spot. I would be okay with someone coming in and really locking that spot down. That would be pretty exciting. All right, this was a fantastic show. I appreciate all of you being here today. Again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe on the way out. If you haven't hit the like button, consider hitting that like button on the way out. I will be back on Between Two Beards tomorrow. We've been off for 2 weeks, little vacation. Randon had some time with family. I had some time with family. It was phenomenal, but Between Two Beards will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Until then, I will be living the dream, and I hope you are as well. We are getting close. We are getting close to practices again, and I'm excited about it. We got one more comment that I'm bringing in here because you know I have to bring in the comments that trail off into the end of the show. NYCE 1030, Rob Shue. I don't understand why everyone says Jimmy needs a stacked roster to win when there's teams out there that on paper have a stacked team better than ours. I'd be interested to hear those that are out there with, I think the Niners are one of the more stacked rosters. I do agree. There are teams out there, namely the freaking Cleveland Browns, where it feels like a tailor-made fit for Jimmy Garoppolo. Cleveland, I'm talking to you. You don't want to go with Jacoby Brissett. Yeah, I know he's a suitable starter for a small number of games, but you're probably looking at a year suspension, and you got to be relevant. Jimmy Garoppolo is your man. We'll sell him for cheap. Just come on, Cleveland. Come on. One more bad decision. That's all I'm asking from you. No disrespect to Jimmy in that bad decision. Just a bad decision to spend so much on a quarterback that would be a short-term rental for them. Come on, Cleveland. All right, that's what I'm rooting for, a Jimmy trade, but it ain't happening until at least mid-August, so buckle up, 49er faithful, because we are hanging on to Jimmy Garoppolo for at least a few weeks more. But it does seem that they could excuse him from camp. He may not have to be out there, so we may not have to put up with the rumors of a quarterback competition. I will be back on tomorrow at 5 p.m. Until then, you know the drill. Cheers, 49er faithful.